G'day. It's time to down your unders. Review and dissection of content from some of the sharpest minds in the game. Hosted by Adam Camilleri. Art of War. Down Under.
Hello, my lovelies, and welcome to episode 235 of the Art of War Down Under podcast. My name is Adam Camilleri. As always, I do apologize if my microphone is a little bit different. I broke the cord on my professional good old microphone, so I'm recording on my gaming headset. If my quality isn't exactly as good as it was, so hopefully it's still audible and lovely for you. I've got three fantastic segments lined up for you. We are going to be, as voted on by my Patreons, we're going to be reviewing all the new detachments. Sans Demons, we're going to be leaving that for its own episode, just do a full Demons index review in addition to Bellacor's new detachment. But kicking things off with the top of the pile, the new menace, Eldari. Never heard of him. They got to be number one for like a couple of weeks, and G-Dub's like, bam, Orks. I am joined once again by Brian Seipp, who has lovingly decided to just be a regular on my freaking show now. He's been on like 3 times in the last like 2 months. Hello, mate. How you doing?
Hi, man. I'm doing good. Glad to have you back, and always a pleasure to be on the show.
Always an absolute pleasure to have you. Of course, there's going to be 2 parts to each one of these segments. I have Folger Pyles lined up for the Custodes segment. I'm still chasing Kyle Grundy for the Tau segment. If I can't get him, well, I'll see who else I can get for Tau. But part 2 for all these segments over on Art of War Down Under on Patreon. Hopefully you will join us there, where we're pretty much going to be answering big questions. I'm going to throw some hard ones at Brian, like how do we balance this detachment, because it so obviously needs it. But this is going to be our usual review. I'm going to do the reading. Brian's going to give you the expert analysis, and off we go. Mordaka is the name of this bad boy, and it is indeed a very bad boy. And the detachment rule reads as thus. During your shooting phase, ranged weapons equipped by Orks infantry and Ork walker units from your army have sustained hits 2. In addition, while the wire is active for your army, Ork infantry and Ork walker units get assault. This is busto. And by busto, I mean absolutely unbalanced, busted. Throw it in the bin. This is insane. Your opinion, please, Brian.
I mean, it's incredible, right? The math is bananas for this, and we're gonna see it a little later. When we get to some of the maybe talk about some of the units you can use in this with things like Ludas and stuff, which naturally hit on 6s, and then suddenly when they take in their rerolls into account, you're getting 100% hit roll win rates hitting on 6s. It starts to get kind of silly and put things in perspective.
So this is like the Spinal Tap amplifiers that went up to 11. Because once you pull the lever on the casino cannon metric, which is the main metric that Orks have kind of had their shooting on forever, once you get to 11 out of 10, it's just reliable. It's just like plottable, reliable damage. In addition, there are some data sheets on this where your sustained hits 2 give you the equivalent of essentially hitting on 3s. Essentially, you're just hitting as good as Space Marines. It's just. And the profiles, because all profiles are all tuned up to, okay, we can give them good profiles because they hit on 5s or 6s. So we can give them souped up good profile shooting because they're not going to hit much. But then you let them hit a lot, and all of a sudden, we're here. Here we are. Hello. welcome to the New World Order, which is the time of Eldar is over. The age of the Orc is here. Anything else to add? Yeah, go.
I was going to say, it's not even just like tactical, right? Because tactical is +1 to hit. And even if this was sustained 1, mathematically, that's kind of +1 to hit, right? But it's +1 to hit with a spike. So sustained is just going to be better. And sustained 2 is effectively +2 to hit with a spike, right? Mm-hmm. So you can imagine if tactical order was +2 to hit and how great that would be. But now also factor in the thing that you could just roll a bunch of 6s and then suddenly you just obliterate your opponent.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, anybody who's a War Room member right now, I'm going to give a spruik to the Art of War. There's a game you should all go watch of Death Watch, which is the Ork killing, Space Marine chapter versus this detachment. And dear me, oh my, there are some things of all time that occur in that game. But anyway, moving on from the absolute bustedness that was the first part of this recording, the Gobshot Thunderbus is the first of the enhancements. Orc model only, range weapons equipped by the bearer have dev wounds and hazardous. And of course, as soon as a picture of a shock attack gun is already in your brain right now, just manifested into your brain. How busted is this, and is it worth the points, Brian?
This one is really good. I do think it's worth the points, but I also don't think you play it, which is going to be evident as you go through some of these other ones. But devastating wounds on what is oftentimes an AP5 shock attack gun.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's great, right? If you're going against 4 bin bone save armies, which do exist and are one of the things that can, kind of stymie tank busters oftentimes. But but a lot of times it just doesn't matter, right? You're going against Rogel Dorn and you have a AP5. It doesn't matter if you're dead wounds. So
yeah, correct.
In that space, it can be a little weaker.
And because it says range weapons, there really isn't anywhere else, any other home for this on a character that shoots hard, is there?
Just the Big Mech, which is one of the things I've been taking a lot, because he gets a custom Mega Blaster, which is kind of cool with his 3 shots, that 9 2d6. So, and that being AP2 makes the devastating wounds a little more interesting, which is kind of nice.
Fair. All right. Dead Shiny Shooters is up next. Orc model only. Range weapons equipped by models in the bearer's unit have rapid fire 1. Now, initially, I looked at this and I thought it wasn't that good because I didn't think, oh, cool, where do you actually want this? But on a unit of tank busters, this just gives them a quantifiable, increase in their output. It's just actual, physically, just cool. I mean, rapid fire range, I have, especially shooting into single targets, this just ups their shots. Is this any good?
I think this is the best one in the attachment.
I think it's baller.
Yeah, I think it's so good when you have tank buses coming out of a truck, shooting 12 inches into something, or you turn your shock attack gun into D6 +2 because what's not going to be in half range of a shock attack gun. It's just it's really powerful when you get those what is effectively extra 5 to 6 shots, especially if you're within rapid fire range with your pistol as well.
Yep.
It's just so powerful, I think.
Yeah, in addition on tank busters shooting into 5 guys, it just means they count as blast 2. Exactly. So you can just look at it like that as well. Targeting squids is up next, Orc model only. Each time the bearer's unit makes a ranged attack, add 1 to the hit roll. But they just could they have some terrible enhancements? Where does this one find a home, and is it any good?
This one's great as well. This is great on any of the shooting assets, right? So which is just going to be either the Ludas that you're probably taking or the tank buses because flash kits can't have characters. But Ludas hitting on 5s with rerolls is great, or 4s with the big gun, which does seem good. I personally prefer it on the tank busters because tank busters have a secret hidden mode because of their blast, where they get not so hidden anymore, but where they get to go after infantry quite effectively. I actually think they're better in infantry and tactical, for example. But when you go into infantry, in this detachment, you don't have the +1 to hit, right? So now you have a unit which is effectively gets the same output, even more output because of the sustain, but the same level of basic kit roll into infantry.
Yeah, wild. And Zogoth and Eid Daka is the best named one, but probably the worst one because this one reads, the bearer's unit cells will shoot in a turn in which it fell back. So I think this could only really come up on the war turn where your unit actually has a save. Because I got to tell you, if I charge an Orc unit, I'm charging it with something that's going to kill it. So, yeah, how do you feel about this?
I think it's actually okay. I think you got to engineer it a bit, right? So first off, if I remember correctly, it's the cheapest one, which is nice. I think it's 10 points, which, well-written lists, oftentimes you have something like that left over. But it's... If you use it with the squad that maybe wants to be a counterattack squad or wants to fight in the middle while the rest of your army is pushing their deployment zone or something, then this can be pretty good. And you can use them to kind of trap things and because one of the downsides of this army as we get to the strats you're going to see is that it doesn't really have fallback and shoot, and when you fall back into the open up transports you don't get any of your rules. So it is a significant drop in output, but this lets you have one squad that's always going to have it. But to your point, Adam, your squads are relatively soft, so they do die if your opponent wants to go for them. So you have to engineer a scenario where they can't go for that squad because they got too much stuff to deal with.
Yeah, and then so you more than likely they're killing the squads in front, piling into you, not dealing you any damage, and you fall back and blow them up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, good old Gretchen screens. But that is the 4 enhancements. Feel free to rank them for us in your order of priority to purchase.
Yeah, I mean, to me, rapid fire is the best one, number 1, and then I would probably say the +1 to hit if you have the points, and then if you don't have the points, you're doing the fallback and shoot, and then the third one, if you have points for 3 enhancements of anyone you want, would probably be the Thunderburst.
Yeah, the devastating wounds. Yeah, I agree with you with the AP that you have on the shock attack guns. Unless you find yourself always fighting Necrons and they're just like 4-up invuln the army. Yeah, I think you can probably leave it on the shelf. It's in some metas. I could see it being very good though, like very
Yeah.
very very good. Like you play against the new demons when they're toughness 13 and stuff on their great unclean ones, and you're like, never heard of you. Don't blow you up with dev wounds. All right, onto the stratagem suite. First up is, I mean, they got some of the best named.
This is my favorite stratagem name, I think.
1 CP, Orks is still Orks. Fight phase. 1 Orks unit from your army that is not been selected to fight. Until the end of the phase, each time modern unit makes an attack that targets an enemy unit. How can you make an attack that doesn't target an enemy unit? Fair enough. Reroll a wound roll of 1. If that enemy unit is within range of an objective marker, you can reroll the wound roll. Now, this is my problem with why this detachment is unbalanced, because you have essentially the most impactful damage increasing detachment ability that we have seen in the game for a single phase, and then you still give them like a 1 CP, we are still beat sticks, incredible stratagem for flipping objectives. How do you feel about it?
The stratagem is really good, but I think a lot of people are getting lost in the sauce when they are writing lists. So actually, I think the stratagem is in some ways a nerf, because people look at it and they go, I got to take all this combat. And then they just forget about the fact that if you take a gun, you are doubling your output. So I think that sometimes that like in some ways, strategy is actually a nerf in list writing because of that.
Because people want to. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Because instead of like leaning full into the Daka sustain 2, people will be like, well, I got to take knobs, I got to take breakers, I got to take this, I got to take that, and they're just not seeing the forest for the trees.
Yeah, you just don't need it, right? I mean, if you just shoot and kill your opponent, and I look at this stratagem as it's a really good stratagem, but I look at it as a way of buffing like small or big units, flash kits, right? Because they're out.
Yeah, me too.
They have 40 or 50 attacks in the WOG. They're strength 6, AP 1. They do decent, but if you give them reroll wounds, they're gonna crumble those things in combat that you want to, right? So
the obvious choice for me, outside of literally just taking the units that you're going to take anyway and making them better, was Beast Snagger Boys with the Beast Boss. And then on the charge, going through a wall, they'll just kill a Wave Serpent for you because of the dead wounds and rerolls off the Beast Boss. And I think one of those is a good idea in a lot of armies, but people have been talking to me about taking 3 or 4 of them, and I'm like, don't do that, man.
I mean, hey, man, I'm the same. I've been wanting to put in Mega Knobs into this list for a while because the real wounds is really strong. The Fiona Pain, anytime you want, as we'll get to in a second, is really strong. But every time I do, I look how many guns I drop. I'm like, no, stop running.
Yep. All right. Moving on to what is being touted as the best 1 CP stratagem in the game, and it might go down as the best 1 CP strat printed in 10th edition, which is a big call because Phantasm used to exist in its pure index form, which was absolutely busted. And you've also got to put this against like Mist of Demos as well, which is one of the other best strats in the game. Get stuck in, lads. 1 CP your command phase, 1 Orc unit from your army. Until the end of the phase, until the start of your next command phase, the war is active for your unit, even if you have already called the war this battle. This means that they will have every effect of the war, in addition to, in this detachment, having assault on their weapons. So please take a moment there, Brian, and reel off all you will get for this 1 CP.
So for this one small little CP stratagem point, you are going to gain a 5-up invuln save. You're going to gain +1 strength. You're going to gain +1 attack. You're going to gain advance and charge, advance and shoot. And if any data sheet abilities your unit might have, like say doubling the move of your Grots and Zodgrot,
or being a war boss,
or war boss getting extra attacks, is also going to happen, all for the measly price of 1 CP.
That is a full stratagem suite of buffs. There are detachments in the game that have that as their whole detachment. That's their whole.
I think it was Innis worded it as if any one of those individual abilities would be a premium strat in any detachment.
Yeah, people pay 1 CP for advanced shoot. People pay 1 CP for a 5-up invuln. People pay 1 CP for +1 attack. People pay 1 CP for plus strength, which is usually pretty mediocre for +1 strength for a CP. Yeah. But like, holy crap, dude! So first and foremost, this should be in Warhorde. This is the CP that Orcs have wanted to have. This is their armor of contempt. This is the one thing that would tie Orcs together perfectly, and it feels like it should have gone in.
If this wasn't any of the detachment, it'd be so good. The one part of this which I think is worth pointing out, which is is like an element of balance that was attached to it is the timing, right? I mean, the fact that it happens in your command phase means that you can't do it on guys in transports, and that's significant. The Orks want to play out of transports. That's how they want to play. So that is important. It is still absurd, and it's still incredible stratagem. It should probably be maybe 2 CP or something at the minimum, but that does limit its ability because you kind of got to set it up a little bit.
Yeah, correct. And 100%. This thing is bread and butter. If you're not building this into your list, or at least giving yourself the option to do this, 2 times a game, what are you writing? Because you're playing so transport heavy, mate, are you building anything into your list to actually make use of this apart from, well, actually I know what you're building into your list, but tell us what it is.
So the core thing I built into my list is Zodgrod and his 20 grots, right? Or 20 grots actually.
Yeah.
Because this unit is a generally really good unit. Full stop, right? It's 20 dudes, it's OC 40. You got a guy who's -1 to hit, -1 to wound, or -1 to wound, sorry, and his unit gets +1 to wound. And you have, as we said earlier, access to reroll wounds, which is pretty cool too, with a unit of little shivs that bite people. But one thing they get, which is important, is they get a 9-inch scout, and then in the WOG, their movement goes to movement 12.
12.
Also gain advance and charge. So what that means is, assuming you go first, your opponent doesn't have any infiltrate, kind of the perfect scenario, you go 21 inches before you even advance or charge on turn 1. Yep. So you get to jail your entire opponent's army in their deployment zone, assume perfect staging with all of your shooting assets, and then WOG next turn and just crush them from the perfect end.
So straight up, this is, I believe, now the best utility unit in the game. It won't scratch the paint on anyone. Well, actually, funnily enough, they might kill some Eldari models, but
they actually killed more than you think because they get the +1 to hit, +1 to wound. So they're hitting on 4s, wounding on 5s, with access to reroll to wound. And Zodgrod himself has 5 attacks that are oftentimes hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s. So they actually do a little bit more than you think they should. They're not going to kill like a Rollgor, but they will. If the unit gets enough bodies on a Rhino, they could drag it down. Especially with Zodgrod. It's real.
And hilariously, you can charge this unit into stuff like Banshees because Banshees will hit on 2s, wound on 2s into a 5-up. Wound on 3s because you'll be -1 to wound, so they'll go back to. And you'll just into a 5-up and you'll actually just kill them.
Also, the Runherders have a decent amount of strength attacks as well. So with +1 to wound and extra strength, they are oftentimes hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s as well. So there's a decent number of attacks there. Just puts a bunch of saves on people.
Disgusting.
Yeah,
everyone build an Overwatch into your army that you don't mind losing turn 1. Is essentially
it's 22 bodies, and Overwatches that are good tend to be 1 damage, like Flamers.
Yep.
And the Run Herders are 2 wounds each, which means that they absorb 4 wounds for the damage you put through without only losing 2 models.
Could they stop? Could you just not? But essentially, this unit is like 20 gargoyles with a freaking winged prime in it that somehow has a 5-up invuln. Like
the way to play around it and to play into it is scout, right? Or an infiltrate rather. Sorry, right? An infiltrate will stop the turn 1 jail, give you a chance to kind of assume the midboard, and you have to be aggressive into this army to have a chance. So. At least taking, and the good thing about the infiltrate is this army and the way they tend to raid, because they're in transports, end up not very many drops. So you just drop your infiltrate after the Zodgrod goes and try to block their scout as best you can. It is unfortunate because then if you go second, you just lose that unit for free, but it does stop the jail.
Yeah. The other thing that I would say is that it is not a bad tech, because I've already been troubleshooting this with some mates. Like we were talking about people bringing a lot of transports, rhinos full of legionaries, etc., and pulses with stuff like that. Deploy your guys in front of those now against orcs. Obviously don't be in line of sight, but deploy them in front of them just to stop them from wanting to charge and tag your entire army. Sure, they're going to jail you.
Set up heroics and stuff too.
Yeah, exactly right. Set up heroics, and then just jump into transports and move off turn 1. Like you don't lose any movement by doing this, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's not a matter of are you going to kill the unit, right? Because
you want to deter them.
It doesn't matter. What the unit wants to jail you, which means that they need a critical mass of bodies, and so if they can get a charge off into a Rhino without getting heroic, they're probably going to do it because they get extra movement, right? But if
Yeah, exactly right.
if they're going to get heroic and lose like half their squad, they're not going to do it because the jail gets freed up. So
Correct. So you want to build deterrence in them from charging and like wrapping transports and using that to like swing the tail of their big streaming unit because it's going to be spread out all over the freaking place. And yeah, so you just do not want to give them the second move, which is the charge move. All right, but moving on. Huge show-offs for 1 CP in your Custodes phase, 1 Orks Walker unit, excluding killer cans from your army, and gosh diggity darn it, killer cans would have been good if they weren't excluded. Until starting next command phase, improve your unit's move, leadership, and OC by 1, and each time a modeling unit makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll. Once again, that is a multi-stratagem. That's a stratagem suite. I would pay 1 CP for +1 OC at times. I would play 1 CP for +1 to hit a lot of the time. I'm not sure I'd pay 1 CP for +1 move, but +1 move, +1 leadership, maybe. How do you feel about this one?
it's good. The problem is that the only walkers you'd really want to take if you're not just playing for fun, if you're not playing in a tournament, if you per se, is the killer cans, right? The killer cans are like on the verge of being okay, and this is
correct.
Them. So it that kind of makes it tough, I think.
Yeah.
The strat's good though. Obviously, like it's a powerful strat. It's just that it's a little too targeted.
Has no application, and of course, feel free to give people some hope. Morkanauts, Gorkanauts, come on,
Dude, I actually think, unironically, that Gorkanauts were pretty close to being good. And Morkanauts and detachment are pretty sweet too, right? So once they start to shave off some of the extreme skews that come with some of the infantry-based shooting guns, I actually think those could come out. Because putting a Morkanaut into the WOG is awesome. Putting this strat on them is awesome. I do think it's quite good.
Yep. All right. Long uncontrolled bursts. Another awesome name. 1 CP. Start your shooting phase. 1 Orks character model from your army. Select 1 enemy unit within 18 of your Orks character model. Until the end of the phase, weapons equipped by Ork models from your army have ignores cover while targeting that unit. Why, oh why does this not have 18 and in line of sight? I do not know. But this thing is amazing.
Yeah, the fact that it doesn't require line of sight means that oftentimes you can use something like Zodgrod to trigger it.
Yeah, correct.
Which he's going to be within 18 inches because we just talked about his plan of trying to run an inch away from you. So yeah, the stratagem is incredible. You have a bunch of AP1 shots, AP2 shots, maybe AP3 shots, but you don't have access to ignore cover in Orks. This is the only way to get it, and your whole army gets it at that target. So God forbid you're a
exactly right. And the timing is so juicy, and the way it's activated is so amazing that theoretically you could be walking tank busters and looters off the board edge and, pointing at them, through 3 freaking ruins and saying you don't get cover, but for these looters who just walked on, that kind of stuff. Or you just disembarked and, didn't quite do enough to get, around the corner to completely take away their cover. And then 1 CP, not a problem. It's really good. It's also really good because there's, just a bunch of AP1 shooting and flash kits and looters that ignores cover is just AP2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really makes them much better.
All right, next up, Special Shells, 1 CP. Your shooting phase, Ork unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot this phase. Until the end of the phase, each time a model unit makes a ranged attack that targets the closest eligible unit within 18, improve the armor penetration characteristic by 1. What did I just say that they had bad AP?
Yeah, this one, in the games I've played, actually, I found that I don't use this strat very often because it doesn't. It's like when you use flash kits, oftentimes you aren't getting the full number of shots, right? You have to engineer it rather hard. Now you can engineer it if you want to, but I think the ignore cover tends to be what you use over this one over the course of the game. But it is a nice one to have in your pocket if a particular target is pushing you really hard and you want to get them.
In addition, it's a great target against 2-up save AOCs. When you just have one big dunk to put on them, and they're gonna have to armor contempt the activation. It's fantastic.
Yeah, for sure.
But honestly, like from what I've heard from people who are playing this detachment, this is overkill. The vast majority of the time, it's just sometimes you don't ignore cover or. To kill 5 Space Marines in cover, like a unit of looters doesn't need any enhancement. You're just going to make them fail enough 3-up saves. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think I've only ever used it on a unit of 5 flash kits shooting like a squad of Marines in cover when I couldn't ignore cover, right? So it's like, it's very. I don't use it very often because the other things are just so good.
All right, last one. Last one, call that Daka. Your opponent's shooting phase just after an enemy unit has shot one Orc unit from your army that had one or more of its models destroyed as a result of that attacking unit's attacks. You can shoot as if it was your shooting phase, but must target only that enemy unit when doing so. It can only do so if that enemy unit is an eligible target. How do you feel about this one? Because this one feels like the one you tell people about, but I'm not sure how often you use it.
I think you tell people about it, and then what I think it does, I think it's incredible because what it does is it means your opponent cannot chip shoot your shooting assets at all.
Yeah.
Right? It means that your opponent's rhinos and their random character guns and all that stuff are not shooting your guys because they can't. Right? And that takes out a decent amount of volume against guys that are, in the WOG turn trying to have just T5 and 5 of invul and save, keep them alive, right?
Yeah. Why this annoys me is that essentially all Orcs already have a 1 CP shoot twice in Overwatch. Vast majority of the time, 1 CP, you're already hitting on 6s with a lot of units anyway, 1 CP shoot again, it's exactly the same activation. This gives them a third possible activation of shooting out of sequence. Second possible activation of shooting out of sequence. And it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, I think it's really good. I do think I've never used the stratagem because I remind my opponents about it every time they're about to do it. And oftentimes when somebody's bringing an actual activation to kill Orcs, it doesn't take a crazy one to kill your guys. It makes the stratagem not worth it. But it is a really nice, secret hidden effect that rhinos lose all their guns.
So a question for you. Theoretically, if someone's in combat with you and they shoot pistols at you, can you shoot pistols back? It's a bad thing to do with this CP, by the way. Like, it's very, very poor use of this CP. But it's funny.
I think you could, yeah.
I think you could. Yeah, it's funny as. One thing we should note when I was touching the detachment, do you get the sustained hits in Overwatch?
No, you don't.
You do not. It's in shooting phase only, which is the only blessed be. Thank God for that.
That and it doesn't work on firing deck, right? Those are two important changes that it make, which is nice to see. So that was good.
Well, that brings us to the end of the analysis of the detachment, dude. As for order of priority in stratagem use, what do you see as the bread and butter, like 1 or 2 strats here?
I mean, you're just putting something that'll WOG 4 out of 5 turns of the game, and the only reason you're not doing that 5th one is because your entire army's going into the WOG. So,
straight up.
Yeah, that stratagem was incredible.
Yeah, and we're actually going to be talking a little bit about strat discipline and how you allocate them, because straight up, yeah, you're exactly right. You want to have 4 CP at all times. Sorry, 4 CP across the state of the game, which means every round you have, if you start at 2 CP every battle round, theoretically, one of those is already spent, essentially. So how do you account for that and talk about it? That's what we're going to be doing over on part 2, so hopefully come and join us. But Madu, time for us to rank and rate this. Is this the best detachment in the game?
Yes, it's not close.
Nope, it is not close. It's not even a thing. Is this? So I am looking at this like this is the Gladius. This is the Gladius Orks detachment that they possibly should have had something much weaker than this on release rather than the Warhorde, which essentially is a 1-track pony. So there's a lot of it's so well rounded, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely skew. Actually, I actually think it's much more skewy. But I think that WOG strat, like if the detachment was just the WOG strat being 1 CP, you would consider it over any other detachment, right? And you would try and build a list around it, right? Like that 0 wounds, you'd be like, all right, that's good enough for me. I'll just use those every single turn, and we'll see what we can do at Orks. There's no detachment roll, that's fine, right? Not worry about shooting at all.
That's hilarious.
It's just such a good strat, right? So I think it's definitely but I think it does skew you towards shooting, right? I mean, and
for sure,
the lists that I'm writing are just taking as many guns as possible. As I said, I think there's a bit of a distraction associated with the combat, but
well, mate, Orks is still Orks.
True. It is true.
So when I say it's well rounded, it means that like you can skew your army and still not have like wasted. So you're essentially taking a Tau army that still punches on demand for 1 CP. Like that's what I mean. Like your units become well rounded. Like you would charge looters into freaking 10 guardsmen on an objective, 100%. 1 CP, they're dead. Like that kind of stuff is what I mean about.
Dude. In the WOG, you're just chucking like 40 attacks at them or something, or maybe they have 2 attacks each, but it's still like 30 attacks at them.
Yeah.
At strength 5. right? Like orcs are just good in combat. They just they're not tapped, right? They're hitting on threes. They're winning on threes.
Yeah, because they're operating at such a good baseline of combat. Making their shooting good is what is like the true thing I meant about well-rounded. Like
Gotcha.
now they're like perfect. It's a problem. So straight up, out of 10, how would you rate this detachment? And I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
I think a 12. In terms of power level, for sure. In terms of balance, probably about a 3.
That dude, I was gonna say a 3 because what's gonna happen?
It's gonna get nerfed. It has to be nerfed for the health of the game, for the longevity of the company. It has to be nerfed. Which is unfortunate because I do love myself some sustain too. I think that explosions are some of the most fun mechanics in the game to play as the attacker, but the profiles are just too good for orcs to let them have that kind of a profile boost.
So I'm quite this is S tier. I'm quite down on this detachment because I think this pushes every other army out of S tier, by the way. Because I don't think it has I don't think it really has a bad matchup. Because if you just take 1 or 2 different units, you're kind of fine. Like if you know what you have to beat. So I think this pushes every other army out of S tier, and we just have this in S, and then we have maybe some A pluses. But I'm really unhappy with this because what's going to happen is this detachment's going to get gutted, and they're going to bump up the points on everything that's relevant in this detachment: the shock attack guns, the looters, the flash kits, the tank busters, and that's going to have a roll-on effect that kind of kills tactical and leaves you back at freaking Warhorde is my big fear about this.
Yeah, well, I mean, you do know I love Warhorde, so I'm actually okay with that timeline. But I do want to see the units not get hit, right? And I think that there are some ways that you can kind of approach this, which will take a lot of the edge off in a very quick way. Most notably, like just change sustain 2 to sustain 1. That's a pretty simple change. It puts it roughly in line with the +1 to hit, which is great. The fact that you get the assault as well is still very, very good. It makes you considered over tactical, but tactical has other combat assets. And then that WOG strat needs to have one of 2 things, I think, need to happen. The first one is a pretty obvious. You could do just UCP. That takes away the jail option early. I think that's good. But another one, which I've been kind of cooking around in my head, which could be kind of nice, is change the timing of the strat so that it has to happen after your army has declared the WOG, right? So you got to continue keeping it the WOG.
Yes, that would be big. So it's only after you call the war you can continue it on this unit.
Exactly.
They've heard the war from the war boss, and it's continuing to resonate with this unit right now. That's actually an incredibly good fix. That'd be a very good fix, and you can keep it at 1 CP if you do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
because a lot of time people are turn 2 wiring, turn 3 wiring, and that really just cuts down the absolute brutality. But anyway, that's going to wrap us up for this part 1. Come over, join us over in part 2. We're going to talk about list construction, what Brian thinks you can do to not get absolutely rickrolled by this. We're not going to sit here and tell you that you can beat this army. You may be able to because you're an absolute monster and you're really good on your chosen faction. We're going to try and tell you guys how to have a fun game into this army and maybe eke out a couple of points if you can. But thank you so much again for coming on, Brian. Anything you'd like to plug before we check out?
Just Team USA has a tournament coming up. That's a charity tournament, which I totally have the info for right in front of me, obviously, and I'm not just making it up. But go check out the Wargaming Federation for details of that tournament. But it's a charity tournament to help some of the Team USA boys fly across the pond and represent our country.
Fantastic. On that note, we are out of here. Sit tight, everybody. Should be back with Folger Pyles in a couple of moments.
G'day everybody and welcome back to the second segment of today's episode. We are here with the big pile himself, the reigning defending WCW champion of the world. His name is Folger. Hello, mate.
Hello. How's it going, Adam?
Pretty good, dude. We are here to discuss the Lions of the Emperor. Yeah, Lions of the Emperor. Yay! Right. That sounds correct. Lions, yada, yada, yada. It's not Dark Angels. You think it should be, but it's not. And this is going to be a fun one because I think this is it's interesting. We got 3 detachments released here. And while I don't think any of them is bad, we have a broken one, a very good one, and an okay one. And this is the very good one, in my opinion.
Yeah, completely agree. It's definitely got potential. Finding the right build, because it's so new, is going to be the fun part. I'm looking forward to it.
We recently had you on discussing Solid Spearhead, and it's going to be interesting to discuss these two next to each other, because obviously Solid Spearhead was the most recent best way to play, accepted best way to play Custodes. I'm interested to see how you compare this one with Solid Spearhead and Talons of the Emperor, which is what you won WCW with. But we'll do that over in part 2. We'll record over there for your viewing pleasure. Hopefully you'll come and join us to get some more, gold and good stuff. But jumping into this detachment, mate, is that already your hot take? Your hot take is like, this is very good, but finding the right list is going to be difficult?
Yeah. So obviously strapping +1 to hit and +1 to wound on two very, very, very good melee profiles turns out makes them even better. I think what people need to be careful about, though, is like always assuming you have your buff online. It's actually not the case. I played, at least in the game I played last night with it, it was like kind of awkward where I had to be like extra mindful of making sure I was setting up buffs. So you can't go, I feel like going too wide is kind of concerning, just because you might not always have your buffs. So you should probably take units that rely on the buff.
All right. The detachment rule is against all odds. Each time Adeptus Custodes unit from your army, excluding vehicles, makes an attack. If there are no other friendly units within 6 of that unit, you get +1 to hit and +1 to wound. A lull that they put in +1 to hit here, but it actually does come up because there are quite a lot of stealth units out there. And in addition, people can, you just say, hey, don't spend, they're going to spend CP on smoke. You're like, don't. You're good, mate. Keep your CP. How do you feel about this detachment rule?
I mean, as a detachment rule, like stapling +1 to wound in theory on your whole army, that's just really good. Like, it's not Lance, it's all the time. You can get charged and still have it. So it's awesome. I mean, it makes the math on certain profiles crazy. Trajan in particular just 1-taps Baby Knights on average with no support. So that's cool. And then like your math into kind of the field means you're always picking sustained, just because it's the same math, because you're like always winning on at least 4s, and then your upswings are big.
Hugely more potential. Yeah, I agree. It's also, what's fascinating here is that I feel like this is so much more impactful when it comes to their shooting, because their melee's already good. Melee's already very good. So often you're charging a unit and +1 to wound wouldn't have mattered. They're dead anyway. But the shooting with +1 to wound, because strength 4 AP 1 2 damage is so very mediocre in so many of the matchups at the moment. Sans Eldar, it's extremely good at Eldar. But as soon as you get that +1 to wound, wow, you can do some stuff. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm pretty sure it takes like 2 4-man guard squads to kill like an executioner on a point without cover. It just shoots. It just gets to see it. Like, and that's in shooting. That's not them charging. Like, obviously they're double shooting and things like that. But like, it just makes your breakpoints enough that with the rerolls to wound on guard in particular, their shooting is nasty.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, totally agree. And the fact that, there's stuff like attaching Draxus to squads and she gets the buff and stuff like that, it's just, man, what a bit of gravy on top of that fine meal. All right, the first of the enhancements, Superior Creation. Infantry, Custodes Custodes infantry model only. The first time the bearer is destroyed, roll 1d6 at the end of that phase. On a 2+, you get back up, out of engagement range with your full wounds remaining. What the crap were they thinking giving this to Custodes? Is this any good, mate?
I think this is probably the best suite of enhancements
in the game.
In any detachment I've seen. It's the only one I've seen where I'm like, I wish I could take 4. Yeah. Where I'm like, there's not one that's not viable.
I think these are the best enhancement suite in the game. I actually don't think it's close. It's so complete. It's so very complete. Where does this find the best home? I think I know the answer. I think many of us know the answer, but what's your answer?
I mean, it's got to be the Shield Captain and Allura's Terminator armor.
100%.
That's just what the detachment enables is. We'll get to it later, but there's a little stratagem that happens to be in here that makes the Shield Captain's once per game insane durability buff. Maybe not once per game.
Yeah.
And if for those of you who don't know, or maybe just need a reminder because this model hasn't seen play in, I don't know, a year and a half, whatever 10th edition is. Wait, is that 2 years now? Yeah, it's coming up on 2 years.
It's almost 2 years.
Anyway, he has a once per game set all incoming damage to 1.
Yep.
And he's, I believe, a 7 wounds as well.
Toughness 7, 7 wounds, 2 up, 4 up. Like so you need to do 7 instances of damage through 2 up, 4 up. And then the bastard gets back up on a 2+ with 7 wounds again. And you have to do the same thing again.
Exactly.
Yeah. He can absorb like whole armies of fire at times. It's kind of revolting. It is 25. It is 25 points. It's not on the cheap side, but it is absolutely on the worth it side.
Yeah. I mean, as far as like rate goes for like this enhancement, with the full wound ones are pretty rare. I think the only one I could think of was Phoenix Gem, and I think that's 35 or it was 40 before Codex.
Yeah.
And that's on like a 4 wound elf character, right? Like this is on a 7 wound Terminator captain. Like
correct. I'd also like to say, but because he's a shield captain, when he uses the 1 CP, use his ability again.
Exactly.
It's free. You can do it for free.
He's a whole package of re-rack it, do it again.
So complete. And just like rapid ingressing this on somebody's flank is such a problem. Such a problem. Like he can tie up a whole half an army, and it's just frustrating as hell. All right, Presidius is up next. This one is, in my opinion, even better because this is just not something I ever thought you should be able to put on a Custodian model. And in addition, it's not on an infantry model either. Adeptus Custodian model only. The bearer has lone operative and stealth. Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. Now, obviously, it doesn't convert it to his unit. That would be, I'd pay 125 points for that.
In Custodes? Yeah, dude. Yeah, baby. You would.
But, I mean, giving that character we just talked about, who sets all damage to 1, lone op and stealth, means that as soon as they commit to him, because he's a lone op, they have to put a real commitment to get over there. He says, I'm not going to die now. Good luck.
So the other one I like is on the Bike Captain.
Agreed.
I do not mind this on the Bike Captain. The Bike Captain's ability is after it's fought, you can either fall back or if you're out of engagement range, do a move. You can just move. And of course you can do that twice because of that same ability we talked about. And so you have the ability to be a lone op that, when people come to close with you, you run out, kill them and run back off to keep your lone op active. And in addition, he's with stealth. That guy is so annoying to kill. Even if he doesn't do the all damage as one, he's still a very frustrating piece. And can play a very janky role. All right, Fierce Conqueror is up next. Shield Captain model only. At the start of the fight phase, until the end of the fight phase, add 2 to the attack's characteristic of melee weapons equipped by the bearer for every 5 models within 6, rounding down. That's kind of the best damage increasing enhancement in the game. In context of it being on an already very good weapon in Custodes.
Yeah. Its upside is like you charge, they castle to not get picked off by your stuff. Then you just charge a guy in, and he's like, I'm +8 attacks. Right? Like
15 attacks.
Yeah. 15 attacks at 722 sustained off 1 character is absolutely insane.
Bonkers.
And this, after saying that, I think this is the one you don't play, which is crazy.
Imagine saying that and in a breath, just being it's pretty easy to get +4 attacks on this with some of the bases you're wielding and some of the speed and the advanced charges and things like that. It's pretty easy to get +4 attacks, and you're not doing it. It's freaking wild.
100%.
All right, and the last one, Adomimortis. Shield Captain model only. Improve the strength of melee weapons equipped by the bearer by 3. Improve the armor penetration and damage by 1. And good God, that's nuts.
I think this is the damage enhancements you play instead.
I agree.
The other thing is, I don't know why, I feel like this was a misprint. That's 10 points. So you're paying 2 points per upgraded stat, which is insane, obviously. It also means you can put this on an axe in particular, which is super juicy.
Yeah. So what does that stat go to? Because the axe has a good strength, but a AP problem.
It goes to ending up with a shield captain with 6 attacks at 12-4.
Lovely. This is another one that I also quite like on a black captain, because that black captain then goes to strength 10 minus 3 damage, which is a great profile with +1 hit, +1 to wound. He'll just literally just go Ice a Rhino and then piss off with his move away, and also can be a bit of an annoying piece.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, my dude. I feel like it's very hard to rank these in priority because you're going to take 3. Just gonna take
yeah,
3.
I think the only thing to stop you from playing them is a couple are shield captain only. And it's just a decision in list construction if you're playing the 3 shield captains that want to have them. Now, what you can do is you start a list off with 3 shield captains and Terminator armor, slap 3 enhancements on there. It's probably pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Just figure it out from there.
Yeah, I don't feel like you can choose wrong. I do feel like Fierce Conqueror, because it is double the points of the other one.
It's 15, which is also a crazy rate. But I mean that's the thing. It's like these enhancements are like actually mind-blowingly good.
Actually, the best enhancements in the game, dude. Loan up in stealth. Oh my god, get back up on death on 4 wounds on a 2+. Like Celestine weeps at this. All right. We're moving on to the strats. Gilded Champion is up first at 1 CP. Any phase just after an Adeptus Custodes character model from your army has selected its once per game ability. 1 CP, you can do it again. You can only do stratagem on the same character once. So this is the one we were talking about. But this is massive. So the context here is, of course, as soon as you look past all the, zeroing the damage goes to 1 and move away and stuff, you realize you get 2 turns of advance and charge off your Blade Champions. And then you realize you get 2 turns of Moment Shackle from Trajan.
Yeah. There are some nasty once per games. Now, they were smart. Yeah. They did not let you, it says character specifically, not character unit, which we all know the immediate context of re-racking your Feel No Pain on Wardens. So I'm glad they didn't do that, just from a balance perspective. But like you brought up, my God, there are some shenanigans. I mean, I think the re-rack the advance in charge is going to come up a lot as well. Yeah, that was kind of the way to get around the Wardens, is kind of bait them out with a medium unit that they have to advance to get to, and then they just re-rack it, and they're a whole other problem with threat ranges next turn.
Correct. You get a medium value unit to bait out the Wardens because they have enough OC on an objective that it's hard for you to take it without killing them off. And then they have to pop their 4-up or die next turn, and in that turn you've backed out of their possible charge range, and happy days. They use their 4-up, and then next turn you just wipe them off the table. Now the timing here is key. So it's any phase just after you use your ability. So you have to key it as soon as you use it, which is big, because when you use your advance and charge, you have to tell your opponent you're gonna spend to use it again, so they know it's coming well ahead of time. So I do like the timing there. It's good for your opponent. It's not full BS like you just use it when you go to use it again. So there is that at least. So which one of the Blade Champs, if someone's spending 3 Blade Champs, that you already know which one of them gets a second advance and charge.
100%.
Yeah, so that's good for your opponent. Is there any downsides to this, or is this just a freaking banger?
I think this is a banger just because it's so flexible with it's functionally advance and charge again, a 2-up invuln or 12 attacks again, reset all damage to 1 again. Bite Captain is
fly away,
attack and fly away again. I don't know. That
seems good.
That one strat, that's pretty flexible, pretty good.
All right, Defiant to the Last is up next. It's a 1 CP fight phase, just to unit selected as targets. 1 Adeptus Custodes unit from your army, that was the target of those attacks. Until the end of the phase, each time model unit is destroyed. If that model has not fought this phase, roll a d6, adding 2 to the result if it's a character. On a 4+, do not remove it from play. The destroyed model can fight. So it's a 4+ on everybody else, a 2+ on characters. So this is one of the worst fight on deaths in the game. But in the context of Custodes, I think it's still okay. What do you reckon?
So normally 1 CP for a 4+ fight on death is okay. It's nice to have. It's not great. The kind of context for this, though, is the added bonus on the character, meaning that your characters fight on a 2+.
Yep.
And also because you're never rolling more than 6 dice. just the threat of this will stop people from basically going in sometimes.
Yeah.
Like if they're like, okay, I'm gonna commit my big unit, and then you fight on death and roll 1 above average, that means you're fighting with a character and 3 guys. Like that's gonna kill most of their unit with +1 to hit, +1 to wound.
Yep.
Like that's just very scary.
So theoretically, let's talk about what's being called as the so there was in the war room right now. There's a game between Jack and Quinton, and I can't remember. I think it's called the Pain Captain, the shield captain in Alaris Terminator armor.
Sure.
What's
It's probably
yeah,
a
whatever.
Smash Captain.
He's got a name for it. But okay, so theoretically, would you take the axe or the Guardian Spear on that guy? By the way, on the one that's getting up on a 2+.
I think I would take the spear.
Me too.
I think it just kind of sucks because your axes are AP1.
Yeah.
If they didn't have the AP problem, I'd see them more. But I think you only take it with the 1 enhancement to make it AP2. I think everything else is spears.
All right, so you're playing against World Eaters. You have this guy. He's made his way into the middle of the table on an objective. They have to charge him. That's all they can do. So they charge. They charge a unit of 8-bound and unit of berserkers in. They activate the unit of 8-bound. Oh, cool. They kill him. Sweet. He fights on death, kills the berserkers, gets back up in the next turn, shoots, then charges and kills the 8-bound. Piss off.
I mean, I'll tell you what I'd rather do with him in World Eaters is charge Angron.
Oh, yeah, correct.
Pop your once per game, live, hold Angron, then get killed in the melee phase the next time.
Yeah.
Stand back up. You free re-racked your -1 and then charge Angron again. He's just
because you're gonna live that combat because he's got to do 7 instances of damage with like his sweep attacks, obviously through the 2+, 4+, and then like you live it. He kills you in his turn. You get back up at the end of that in your turn. You just shoot and charge him again and just do it all.
And you're just staring at Angron like, yeah, you can stand.
No, do not want. All right, next up, Peerless Warrior, 1 CP, fight phase. 1 Adeptus Custodes unit from your army hasn't been selected to fight until the end of the phase. Melee weapons equipped by models in your unit have precision. 1 CP, give precision to every model in your unit. I don't love it. I don't hate it either, but I do think it will come up. There are matchups where I think this is not bad. What do you reckon?
I think that there's a good way to look at this. Is it the best strat? No. Are you ever going to be using Epic Challenge ever again? And is this a strict upgrade? Yes.
Absolutely.
Like when you want to kill the character, this removes the chance of whiffing. Like no unit of Custodes is bouncing off a character with 30 attacks, right?
No,
like, that character is dead.
Yeah.
And because it's precision, you can allocate them slowly. So then you're not even like, it's not like the damage goes away after the character. I just think you're right about it being not every game, maybe 1 in 2 games, 1 in 3 games.
Yeah. I mean, you're playing against a guy who's got like a maxed out unit of wraiths in Awakened Dynasty. 100%.
Exactly.
You just go in, ice that Technomancer. Don't take any chances.
Yep.
Here we go. Here's a fun 1 to unpack. Many will remember this name from days of yore because I believe this is the 3rd time this enhancement or something similar. This is the 3rd edition. This enhancement has made it. This stratagem has made it into the game. Unleash the Lions. 1 CP, your command phase. 1 Alaris Custodians or Aquilona Custodians unit from your army that is on the battlefield. That unit splits into separate units, each containing 1 model, with each unit having a starting unit strength of 1. So you can have a unit of 6 Alaris and 1 CP. You now have 6 units of 1 Alaris. This seems very fun. And it's debatable how good this is, but I can't tell you it's bad because it can't be bad, right? You tell us a story.
Yeah. So when I first read this, I was like, okay, this seems really, really good because you get so many units. But what I kind of think this is kind of bait. I don't think you should build for it in terms of like, I'm taking a 6-man and turn 1, I'm splitting them. Because it actually just like turns your buffs off everywhere, right? Because you need to be away from your other units. I think the usage of this is going to be once you've like put the melee pressure on them, you've killed a bunch of stuff, they've killed a bunch of your stuff. and you don't have very many units left, and you draw like an action secondary, you spend it, you split the unit, your rest of your unit runs in, the one guy runs back and does the action or whatever the secondary is, right? I think that would be probably the best use of it. I mean,
so I see two uses. I don't think you ever want to take the unit of 6. It's too many points. 1 unit of 2 or 1 unit of 3 is the way I'd go with it. And the 1 unit of 3 would solely be to. Sorry, here's the other thing you have to take into context, guys. So the Alaris Custodian's ability is once per battle at the end of your opponent's turn. If this unit is not within engagement range, you can remove it and place it into strat reserve. Because they started on the table at the timing of when you split them, when you put them into strat reserve at the end of your opponent's turn, you can keep them there in perpetuity as long as they're on the table by the end of turn 5. Because it doesn't say that they have to come down the next turn, and they're just going to be in strat reserve but started on the table. So you can hold them for secondaries as you draw them throughout the game. I think the more proactive way to do it is to join them to one of your Alaris shield captains, rapid ingress them in, get them into your opponent's lines, and then split them up once you're there. Like once you're inside your opponent's army with a rapid ingress, move, charge, whatever, split them up and then go and harass and make your opponent's, activation economy trashed.
100%.
Just trash their activation economy because so many armies are on a knife edge of whether one activation kills an Alaris. Like I'm thinking about Eldar right now, 5 Wolf Spiders. I don't know if they kill an Alaris that consistently. I don't know if they've got a shot at killing an Alaris. Guardians doesn't kill an Alaris, and you've got possibly two or three in a shield captain that have just split up in their lines. Like, is that a good play? Because that seems sick to me.
So, as long as you can set it up where you live, yes.
Yeah.
Tagging like 4 things in Eldar is just like the game is over.
Well,
like,
guard as well, man. Yeah, guard as
true.
well.
That's true.
Have activation issues. I mean, Kazagan can, probably kill 2, but they might have to try and kill 3, and they may fall short. Then there's units like Hellhounds, doesn't necessarily kill an Alaris. A freaking Lehman Ross might not kill an Alaris if it's not a Lehman Ross battle tank might not kill an Alaris if the Alaris is in cover and not on an objective.
You just 4-ups do the 4-up thing. Your T7, they're not when you want 2s with most things. Most of the time it's going to be 3s. Like, sometimes you just live.
Sometimes. So in your mind, how good is this? And you don't think people should build into this? Like people shouldn't go and get their 18 Alaris on the table and just first turn split 6, second turn split 6, third turn split 6, 18 Alaris.
Yeah, probably not. I think it's really cool, but I think you probably want to use it strategically, not build for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. And the whole reason you're keeping them together on the rapid ingress is to get your detachment ability on the turn you want to go in and smash something. And then once you've done a big hit, it behooves you to split up and just start tagging stuff and being annoying and flipping objectives and stuff. That at least was my thinking.
Yep.
All right, maneuver and fire is up next for 1 CP. Your movement phase just after an Adeptus Custodes model from your army falls back. That Adeptus Custodes unit till the end of your turn, your unit is eligible to shoot and declare a charge in a turn in which it fell back.
I mean,
hell yeah.
It's just great to have. I never ever complain about a detachment with the strat in it. Like, no, I just love having it.
And it's the best version of the strat. It's the 1 CP do it all. For the longest time, Votan was the only one who had the full version of the strat. It just seems like, somewhere in the, 9 months into the edition, they decided this is the only one that should exist. And, everyone now gets it. But very good for Custodes.
100%.
Yeah, because I know a lot of the time people will try and charge Custodes with a bunch of trash and, hit them at one side of their, hit 2 rhinos, one goes into each side of the unit, and then you base the middle with a bunch of cultists and nonsense and, try and keep them for a turn or 2. And this was just be like, you didn't do anything.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Swift as the Eagle. And this, in my mind, is one of the better stratagems. So 1 CP, your opponent's shooting phase just after an enemy unit has shot. 1 Adeptus Custodes unit from your army that isn't a vehicle that was selected as a target of one or more of those attacking units' attacks. Your unit can make a normal move of up to D6. So this is big, but how do you feel about it first?
So first reaction was very excited because on its face value, insanely good. I used it in a game last night and I rolled the 1 and felt really bad. It rolled really bad, but so it's a little inconsistent. If this was flat 6 or even 2D3,
be broken.
It'd be absolutely cracked. Like, it's insanely good. It's so good, dude. It's so good.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of look at it that way in the terms of like when you roll, like probably the percent, how much win percent do you get if you use the strat and roll a 5+? Like,
Yeah.
it's probably a significant difference. It goes from you're taking one activation on your unit and then hiding behind a wall versus getting hit with most of their stuff, right?
Yeah.
So the ability where they have to like they're going to be stressed out their whole movement phase, like, oh my gosh, this guy's going to move when I shoot him, and I have to be very careful I don't let myself get cut on angles, which means they're moving up further into you, which is what you want. Like, it's a great strat. I think it's what actually makes it a real consideration between this and Talons is that you still have like a tricky move strat.
Correct. Yeah. It's the fact that this feels well-rounded in what it does.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it is like no vehicle benefits from any part of this detachment, but it is a well-rounded suite of enhancements and stratagems. Like, and you'll see, I've already kind of recorded the Tau one, and the Tau detachment is so straight up and down, and they're screaming for a dynamic stratagem. This has dynamic stratagems. It has jank stratagems. It has fall back and do whatever you want stratagems. It has damage increasing stratagems. It has fight on death stratagems, and enhancements that will just make baby Jesus absolutely cry, because why on earth did they let you have all 4 of those? Why doesn't any of my detachments have anything good as this stuff? But so the reason the Swift of Eagle, in my opinion, is such an issue is not because of what this does. It's not actually because of the stratagem. It's because it dynamically changes all the ranges and threats of your units in the eyes of your opponent. It is a fundamental change to how your opponent gets to tackle you and how close and how far they have to stay away when they do so, depending on what they are. The fact that you can, and straight up, you're always going to get value out of this, because there's no army in the game that one-shots a unit of wardens with the 4-up on their pain. There's no single model in the unit. There's no single unit in the game that one-shots. That single activation kills that unit, right? So you're always going to have the ability to use this, correct?
100%. I mean, the other thing to consider is your opponent, like the mental tax on them of, is he going to go back and play safe? Or is he going to use this as a functional extra advance in charge? Like sometimes like, if they undercommit and they like just shoot a unit to try and chip you or bait out your 4-up, okay, it's probably better to just not shoot me at that point, right? Because I just go D6 further into your lines.
Well, what has to happen here is that if you have set this up that you can just like bounce through a wall off a single activation and then be untargetable, you can't be shot. You become lone up. You become lone up 1. You can't shoot me within 1. The only thing you can do is try and jail him and control the movement of the unit. And the other way I looked at it, as you said, another advance in charge, but also more than that, because you can use your advance in charge, re-rack your advance in charge, then spend your 4-up. You now have a D6 plus D6 rerollable plus charge rerollable plus 6-inch move. And that just that's the thing that really F's with people's brains. It fundamentally changes the range upon which you can engage with this army. And I think that's the biggest thing. Is like, well, now I have a 2d6 advance if you try and hurt me.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah. All right, my dude, that brings us to the end of the stratagem suite. As a Custodes player, and on behalf of all Custodes players, as you are the big Pyle himself, out of 10, how happy are you with this detachment?
I would say probably a solid 7.
Ooh.
I think I'm pretty optimistic. With the nerfs to Solar Spearhead and Talons in terms of just points, I think this is a legit 3rd option, and I'm looking forward to testing to find out which of the 3 is going to be the best going forward.
Yeah, I agree. We're going to be tossing up the pros and cons of all 3 of those over on the part 2. I'm higher than you on this. I'm like an 8, almost a 9 out of 10 on this, because I just feel like this is. So it's very hard to make a Custodes detachment that activates other units without making it pigeonholed into only that unit is good in this detachment, which is what a lot of other detachments have done. I mean, case in point is the Votan one, the Zangor one, a lot of the Grotmus ones. They've brought out a detachment that makes Alaris a lot more appealing and a lot more takeable, and made a shield captain that was virtually untakeable, extremely takeable, while still making the rest of the army good, functional, and almost and just as buffed. So I feel like this is almost as good as a detachment gets. In context of it being Custodes, that's where it gets a little debatable how good it is compared to its contemporaries.
I agree.
All right, my dude, with the, somebody like yourself at the helm, how good can this, take Custodes? Where on the competitive tier list do you put this detachment?
That's a good question. We all know it's not the best detachment that came out. The Orks
No, it's not.
detachment is crazy. Holy crap.
The good thing to say is, because it doesn't hold a candle to that, it might not get nerfed in the first round because all the eyes are going to be on the Orks.
Yeah. I feel like Custodes are going to be in a bit of a spot right now where if the meta goes where I probably think it will, is that everything's going to get nerfed down around them in the next patch. And I think we'll be super dangerous then. In terms of context right now, I think it does help in some of your credible matchups that you like struggle with damage output through. I'd probably say top of B tier off of my first trip, maybe bottom of A, if depending on how the builds come out. I'd put it somewhere around there though.
Yep. I put it around the bottom to middle of A. I think the best players on the right terrain, because we will go discuss it over on the other side, because I think the big question here is to Caladius and not Caladius in this detachment. And that's going to really be telling on different terrain formats, different mission structures, stuff like that. So we're going to go over and discuss that. But I have this as a very solid contender, but it is a fair ways off the best. And we're going to talk about some matchups as well, because I'm really keen to hear what you think about this into some of the big bads at the moment.
Agreed.
But we'll go over and call that over on the other side. Hopefully you will join us there. Mr. Pyles, is there anything you'd like to plug before we check out, my dude?
No, not really, dude. Big pile out.
A big pile out. That's us done. See you on the other side, guys. Sit tight. I've got the wonderful Lewis Smith joining us, who came third at the LGT wielding Tau, and he's here to give us a rundown on the new detachment. Love you all. Take care. See you on the other side. And we are back with our third segment. Brand new guest, brand new expert to the show. You may have heard about him. Even if you haven't heard his name, you may have heard about him from his beautiful mercurial run with Tau at the LGT, piloting a Tiger Shark to third place. He's the brand new member of Team Ignite as well, which are pretty much staking their claim as the best team in the world, and definitely were last ITC season. His name is Lewis Smith. Welcome to the show, mate.
Hello, thank you for having me.
My absolute pleasure.
I'm so flattered to be known by the models I play and not by who I am. Or the models I can't play anymore.
Well, there are so many names in 40K. People can only hold them in their collective conscious for so long. But lists stick around forever. We talk about lists like generationally. Like we still talk about Double Spear Yanari. We still talk about Drukari, Thick City and Muscle Beach. And we have all these names for all these different lists that have just kind of lived, for sometimes like decades on in people's minds. Screamer Star, Crusher, whatever. Yeah. So you might be the Tiger Shark guy. In fact, I've coined you a nickname, which is the Tiger Shark King, and someone should definitely make a meme of you as the Tiger King.
There's a lot of like Simpsons memes for that. I guess Tiger Shark King speaks to the pockets too deep, not much common sense. Wants to put 3 kilos of resin on the table.
Well, it also speaks to that COVID Netflix special Bonanza show, Tiger King. And that's more what I was thinking. But you'd be more classy than that, I would think.
Yeah, I didn't murder anyone to put that model on the table.
You promise?
Yeah, I promise.
Yeah, you just murdered their armies. It's fair.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are here to review the experimental prototype Cadre. And off the cuff, mate, what are your hot takes on this detachment?
I'm going to call it another shade of grey to every other Tau detachment. But that doesn't mean it isn't fun.
Yeah, it's funny that they seem to. This is going to be an interesting hot take. There are a lot of correlations in my mind, and there have been for many years, between Tau and AdMech, both being shooting based, archetypes, both, kind of playing the game in a similar way in different editions and different codexes and stuff. Of course, AdMech has quite a bit more melee these days, and that has been building up over time. But I feel like AdMech has all the detachments that Tau want, and Tau have all the detachments that AdMech want. It's actually quite interesting.
Yeah,
you have all the...
Between us, we can make a functional army.
Possibly. Yes. It feels like the tower detachments are very specialized, if not pigeonholed, detachments, whereas AdMech have all these broad sweeping detachments that don't add up to enough. Whereas you have all these pigeonholed, very specific things that will soup up exactly this and nothing else, and it ends up not being enough, and it comes to the same result. And that's how I feel about this detachment as well.
And I think also our data sheets are generally okay. You look at them and you think, oh, these are pretty good. If I had these in any other army, I would be very, very happy. So
yeah, I tend to agree. I think there is a. So here's my another hot take with Tau. We're gonna definitely talk a lot more about this and Tau's problems over on part 2, because of course there is going to be part 2 of this. Yada yada, come and join us out of War Down Under, yada yada. You know where it is. But Tau, when I look at a Tau list, it feels like they have it all. Like there's just so much stuff in their lists. But then when it comes to playing on the table, they've always got a couple of units that aren't fit for the matchup.
Yeah, you can't get everything, and then there's the other aspect. I'm trying not to say issue. We'll just say aspect and keep it neutral. That maybe a third to a quarter of your list is units to use an army rule.
Yes, correct.
So I mean, and you don't, and I guess in an ideal world, you don't even want to bring that. So when you start to unpack what you've got, it's it really reduces to how many useful units you've got on your list. But you do get a lot of stuff. So.
Yeah, correct. I mean, I look at a lot of lists and I see 2x10 Pathfinders, 3x3 stealth suits, and I'm like, so you're doing that just so your army can play, right? Yeah. Even though stealth suits, I think are really, really quite good.
Yeah.
Sure. All right. Let's jump into this review. The detachment rule, as always, guys, I'm going to read the things, and then Lewis is going to give us the expert commentary. So superior craftsmanship is the detachment rule, plus 6-inch range to all your ranged weapons. Bada bing, bada boom. Easy, simple, quick. How do you feel about it?
It's a good rule which is easy to forget, right? Because you look at a unit in your book and be like, I'm shooting 12. No, you're not. You're shooting 18. So I think for me, it obviously has a greater effect on the units with shorter range than longer range. And I guess it's in the context of the game of whether that is relevant or not. And I think that's still to be determined to a degree. But I think on its face, like making flamers 18-inch range, melters 18-inch range, breachers 16-inch range is a really nice buff. It's a really
I like how you mentioned that as well. Like it's like on a flamer, it's 1/3 more distance, whereas like on a missile pod unit of crisis suits, it's absolutely negligible. Was it changing from 48 to 54? Who cares?
Yeah, exactly. Or like, I mean, if you're shooting a railgun and then you can tell your opponent that you can shoot them off the board as opposed to just the length of the board, I think that's an important flex as well.
Absolutely. I used to do that with mates when I was playing my basilisks, which they'd have like 120-inch range, and you'd be like, "You see that guy on 2 tables over? Yeah, I got him. I got him covered too."
Exactly. Exactly.
But how actually good is this?
So I think there's from a rules point of view, it interacts positively with like melter range and rapid fire, and I think that's really, really nice. So taking your melter range on guns from 6 to 9, I think, is quite significant in terms of distances that you can play. It doesn't help deep strike, but I think that's a positive thing. I think to be really critical though, I think it has in like games on like WTC tables or UKTC, which is what I play, it has probably, I'm going to say 0 impact, because the issue for Tau is kind of closing the distance and getting to see into the ruins and round the corners. Not usually I think it would be rare to say that I've played a game where my opponent has been sitting 27 inches away from me in the open, and my unit needed to be able to shoot that extra 6 inches or something. Like that doesn't happen.
Yeah, because so often you're shooting from one no man's land objective onto another no man's land objective, and we know those are usually within minimum, like at the absolute extremities, are under 24 inches away from each other.
I guess first the other thing, sorry to say, but I guess this could come up minorly, is that if you are trying to keep a distance from your opponent, it could be helpful, because I guess units which move 6 and then have to charge on 2d6, it's not going to be as trivial to get into the unit you're shooting if you're like breaching your 16 away rather than 10 away. But I just think it may not come up. That's all.
Yep. All right, Supernova Launcher is the first of the enhancements, and you'll find a theme with these enhancements. Each one of these enhancements enhance one gun that you will most likely find on a Crisis Commander. Tau Empire model only. I don't know why I need to read that in the Tau detachment, but here we are. Select one airburst fragmentation projector equipped by the bearer. Improve the strength characteristic of that weapon by 3. Improve the AP and damage by 1. Now, off the cuff, you would be like, oh my god, that is so many things. But is this one any good?
Yeah, so I think, as you pointed out, calling it a Tau Empire model only as a sentence is pointless. It's it's really a relic which can only go on an enforcer or a the other one, right? The Cold Star battle suit. Yeah, sorry for that, because they're the only two which can take that weapon. And as you said, it only goes on one weapon, and it takes a weapon which is I think it's D6 shots, strength 3.
Correct.
With no AP and damage 1 to 6 minus 1 2, which is, I think, sounds like a phenomenal amount of stats. I think it's got an awesome name. We're just going to throw that in there. Supernova Launcher.
It absolutely does.
So I really like it, to be honest.
It's indirect fire. It's indirect fire and blast. We should point that out, and 24-inch range, which will go to 30-inch range.
Yeah. So it's a lot of keywords. Yeah. So I think there's 2 things for why I like it. I guess as an indirect weapon, you would probably say, well, it does nothing. I think a lot of people look at indirect weapons of only firing indirect. But I think I would just kind of add that you would take these characters in units of Crisis. So if you put this in a unit of Fire Knife, then the character gains full rerolls to hit against full strength unit. So it's not just an indirect weapon; it's an indirect weapon with full rerolls to hit. So it instead of it maybe on its own killing 0 models or 1 model, maybe it can reliably kill 1 or 2. So I guess in some situations it's not nothing. But I think actually the reason I'm leaning towards liking this a lot is because I think it comparatively lines up really well to taking a missile pod or a better missile pod on a character, because missile pod is 2 shots, 7 minus 1 2 at range 30. Well, if I told you could have a character who's got D6 shots at 6 minus 1 2 at the same range, and if it's going to serve that same role, it's like I'd happily shoot that direct, and 2/3 of the time it has more shots. So
yeah. Well, I also wanted to point out the burst cannon and high output burst cannon. Well, I'll sort of talk about the higher burst because it's the better of the two. It's 18 inch. This has 6 inches on that, even with the +6. It's 8 shots at 501, and this will be D6. And if you're shooting at a unit of 5 guys, D6 +1. So you are going to have averaging 4 shots in a perfect world. So half the shots, but you have AP, you have better strength, and you have 2 damage. So half the shots, but a much better profile. Like, it is debatable, and of course that is only takeable on the Cold Star as well. If you want to compare those, apples to apples.
But it's a nice number of damage 2 shots. So you will kill Marines in the open.
For sure. There is also that. You can just be shooting people in the open. And hell, you play against GSC that one game and it's D6 +4 because you're shooting into 20 neophytes and you're like, oh, well, this is now good. All right, thermoneutronic projector is up next. Tau Flamer equipped by the bearer. Improve the strength characteristic of the weapon by 2 and improve the armor penetration and damage by 1. I like this one a lot because it makes the most of the range increase as well, because of course it goes from 12 inches to 18 inches, a whole third added there. And then you go from strength 4 to strength 6 at AP 1 2 damage. Makes a very tasty Overwatch into a bunch of different things. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, I like this a lot. And I think when we get onto the strats, we'll see it synergizes quite well with some of the stratagems you'll like to use on it. I think it makes the unit a lot scarier for an Overwatch, which I think is quite cool. I mean, it sounds great. I think also there's a nostalgic element for Tau players. Like, this was a relic in 9th edition that was taken a lot. So
it really was.
And I think they've kind of hit the nail on it with this one.
All right. The next one is the plasma accelerator rifle. Of course, select one plasma rifle, improve the strength characteristic of the weapon by 2, improve the attacks arm penetration, and damage by 1. So your usual plasma is going to be one shot at 833. So this is going to be 2 shots, which is nice. You're already doubling the output, which is fantastic. At strength 10, minus 4 damage, which is not bad.
Yeah, it's cool, which is the same as what I think I've said for the other ones.
Yeah.
I guess you would take it if you've got the plasma rifle and you haven't got a relic otherwise on the character. Why not? Why not take an extra shot, which is damage 4, and sounds quite scary. But yeah, I mean, for me personally, this is the one I rank the lowest. Let's say. But just because it's not always going to be the most relevant to go from, if this is an anti-infantry weapon, from strength 8 to 10 or damage 3 to 4.
I mean, sure, shooting 8 bound, like that have a 6 up feel no pain. This becomes exclusively better because it's 4 damage into the feel no pain and strength 10 instead. Yeah, but there's very few weapons where this hits breakpoints that are of actual difference. In addition, it's the one that has the worst context when you look at the army. Like, I find that the plasma unit of suits is kind of the least takeable one, and so when you take a plasma commander, you want to put it with the plasma suits, and when its adjoining unit doesn't add up, then this one loses value once again.
Yeah, exactly.
Last one is another of the OG named weapons, the fusion blades, baby. Select one fusion blast equipped by the bearer. Improve the attacks, which is the most important one they could have improved, by 1. Improve the strength by 3, and you have melter freaking 4. This is great.
Yeah, this is cool. It's great. I think it's obviously going from strength 9 to 12, strength 12 on an anti-tank weapon is phenomenal. And then again, like in the context of units that joins, it'll be rerolling wounds and damage into monsters and vehicles. Like, it makes this character a monster for killing, the target that you really want to kill. So I like this. I would just really criticize that it's fusion blades. It has a continuous beam of energy that comes out of the barrel. Why is it not a melee weapon as well?
Correct. It was a melee weapon forever. It was one of the only 2 melee weapons you could take, because there was the donkey punch, we used to call it, with the Onaga gauntlet, and there was a fusion blade, which should let you use your fusion profile in combat. You still usually hit on freaking 4s, but you had the chance to go in and slice and dice that transport.
Where's his las cannon arms for one? Yeah.
It's a little annoying to me. I would say this is the mathematically highest increasing damage one, because you go from you get melter 4, but you also double the amount of shots. So now, instead of having 1 melter 2 shot, you have 2 melter 4 shots. So you go from doing min 3 damage on this current fusion blaster to doing min 10. If you have 2 wounds, if you have 2 shots that both hit both wound and go straight through, your minimum damage is 10, whereas your minimum damage on the single melter blaster, fusion blaster, was 3. So that is an exponential mathematical increase, which is why this is kind of my favorite one.
Yeah, so you've sold it to me. So yeah.
All right. Well, it's time for you to sell some things to me. So rank in order of priority these enhancements for people to take. Like, which ones are the auto takes, if there are any, and where do you go to pass those?
Yeah. So I think from where I've been kind of brewing with this detachment so far is having 2 to 3 units of suits with characters. So you're taking 3 or 4 possibly. And I've been liking a unit of suits with fusion. So fusion blades is the auto take, and it's a nice anti-tank unit. Why wouldn't you take it? And then the flamer unit also seems really interesting as well, with 18-inch range. So those 2 units exploit the detachment rule the most. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And then I think the supernova launcher and the plasma accelerator rifle are kind of about the same. You may not end up taking either of them if you don't run fire knife, but in the end, I think I personally prefer the supernova launcher, just because of the volume of damage 2 shots feeling more relevant for clearing units than 2 shots in a plasma rifle.
It also feels like the supernova launcher can at least go in a burst suit unit, whereas like it can line up with their profiles and hunt the things they want to hunt as well. Yeah. Whereas the I think the plasma is kind of the redheaded stepchild here. It doesn't really line up with any of what you want to be doing at the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, into the stratagems. The first one CP automated repair drones. It's in your command phase. So it doesn't say your command phase. It's in command phase, so you can do it in your opponent's. One Tau Empire battlesuit unit from your army. Select one battlesuit model in your unit. That model regains D3 plus 1 lost wounds. So there's no bringing them back from the dead. That would be too good, possibly. But D3 plus 1 lost wounds isn't the worst thing in the world. And does a commander count as a battlesuit unit?
Yeah, I think it has a battlesuit keyword. So yes, so you could heal characters with this.
Man, 6 wounds, toughness 5, 2 up save on the enforcer. That's not bad at all.
Yeah, I mean it hits some small things as small as a stealth team. It goes all the way up to riptides, and then in between you've got the broadsides and the ghost kills, which I mean all seems really nice to be able to hit. I guess there's the timing point is kind of interesting, and I don't have an answer to this yet. But I guess if healing a model in the command phase affects whether or not you have to take a battle shock, I think that points to it being quite relevant.
Well, exactly right. Like you've already used your insane bravery. You have a ghost kill on an objective for 5 primary. You can't auto pass it, and you can't. You don't have the. So yeah, you 1 CP. Try and get 2 or 3 wounds back to get above the threshold, and happy days. There's your primary score.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good to me. I think yes, CP is generally quite a tax in the game, and you don't have enough of it. So you may not be using this every game, but I feel like if you're using it, it's because it makes a big difference. So it could be quite impactful.
All right. Next up is reactive impact dampeners 1 CP. It's in your opponent's shooting phase or the fight phase, just after enemy unit selected as targets. 1 battlesuit unit from your army that was selected until the end of the phase. Each time an attack targets your unit, if the strength characteristic of that attack is greater than the toughness characteristic of your unit, -1 to wound. 1 CP -1 to wound is fan-freaking-tastic on these units. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think this is an amazing strat. It could be the best one outside of the ones which make your units deal damage. But like any unit which is a battlesuit to the same ones from above in shooting or fight phase, -1 to wound if you're higher strength. So you get the mini transhuman effect. Is really, really good for survivability. And I think it really adds to the survivability of your tougher battlesuit units, like a Riptide, where maybe you're wounding it on 3s. Well, now you've got to jump through the hoop of wounding it on 4s, and then I have a 4-up invuln. So, I mean, it's pretty disheartening when you know that it reduces the odds to after hitting to 25% of possibly getting a wound through. So, yeah, I think it makes some of these units, nigh impossible to kill at range unless you're devoting, a gun line, an entire gun line into that one model. And I think it's higher phase as well. So
I think it's fantastic. And the fact it's in the shooting phase as well, like, so you get to flex it like, oh no, Angron made it into me, maybe I'll try and survive, something like that. It just has opportunity cost there as well.
Yeah. And honestly, you might survive. I don't know how many attacks he is. Is he like 6 at the moment? He could be 8, and that would be embarrassing. But okay. Well, if it's 8, I mean, even if he gets all hits, only on average maybe 3 or 4 or 5 of them are going through. So there's a chance you survive.
And then he decides to sweep, and you're like, it doesn't matter. Experimental weaponry is up next to 1 CP. It's in your shooting phase. 1 Tau Empire from your army hasn't been selected to shoot. And to the end of the phase, each time you roll 1 or more dice to determine the number of attacks made with a weapon equipped by a model in your unit, you can re-roll the result. So this is just straight up the Crisis Flamer team strat.
Yeah, it's quite funny. I don't know why they didn't just write Flamer on the target.
Can you take a unit of airbursts? You can't take a unit of airbursts, can you? Only selectable on the commander.
One on a character.
Yeah, whatever.
So, and I guess the timing of this as well, because you haven't been selected to shoot, so you can't use it after the fact of when you've rolled the number of shots. So it's going to be worse than a command reroll.
On a one dice roll. Yeah. So how many D6s does a unit of crisis? A unit of 3 crisis with flamers. How many D6s do they throw?
That's 6. And then
6d6, and then a commander.
if you take a character in it, you could have another 4. So you could have 10d6 with re-rolling the number of shots.
Yeah, that's kind of always going to be valuable. It's just whether or not you're going to kill the unit anyway, and you just have to make that decision.
Yeah.
Like,
Or maybe it's the first time in the history of 10th edition that you're split firing a tower unit.
Hey, wild. The only caveat here is it can't be done in Overwatch, which is probably for the best. 10d6 re-rolling Overwatch. Woo! Yeah, no.
Yeah, but
do not want.
Yeah, I like this stratagem. I think it makes the thermoneutronic projector got it in more appealing as well as the relic. And I think it's like it gives a very clear plan of what you're trying to do with a unit.
I think it's a case for taking 2 flamer units as well. One unit has the thermoneutronic and the 3 flamers, and the other one has the super flamer and 3 flamer suits. And, they're all getting so much from the extra range. They're all getting access to this 1 CP strat. And there's another couple CP strats that benefit flamers pretty well too here. Next one is experimental ammunition for 1 CP, your shooting phase. 1 Tower Empire unit has been selected to shoot. Select one of the following to apply to your unit until the end of the phase. Improve the strength characteristic of weapons equipped by models in unit by 1. Like I said about flamers, strength 5 is a nice breakpoint. Improve the strength and armor penetration by 1, but you get hazardous. Your unit can't be targeted with this and the next stratagem in the same phase, and you'll see why, because they would combo off horrifically. How do you feel about this strat, mate? Seems quite freaking good.
Yeah, it feels good. I feel like they intentionally toned it down a bit by not letting you choose AP or strength.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm going to complain and say that's a shame, but
it is.
And I don't think it make the army suddenly absurd, but they made that choice. And I think it is a good strat because the situations where you need to hit that break point of an extra strength is amazing. And I think there will be situations where the extra AP matters as well, and you're willing to sacrifice, taking a hazardous on it. I think the only thing to add to nuance to this is because weapons on the bearer include the war gear, such as all of the gun drones with pulse cards. It doesn't, on its face, you don't think, it's 1 hazardous per model. You can end up with taking, so like if it's a crisis unit where they've got 6 weapons and potentially another 6 gun drones, well, then you've got 12 hazardous on 3 models.
Yeah, and you can just spike and roll 4 1s, and you're like, I did as much damage to me as I did to you. That feels bad.
Yeah. And I don't think you have to take hazardous on weapons you don't declare to shoot. So I guess there's a situation here where you're only shooting the relevant weapons as well, and you just choose not to fire the gun drones. So I think on the whole, this is a great stratagem, and it kind of it mitigates some of where this may be a less shooty detachment, let's say, compared to the other ones in the Tau book.
Now, this one does say Tau Empire unit, doesn't say battlesuit unit. So there are some actual applications here outside of the things you would normally think. The first one that jumped to mind to me was Skyrays and Ion Hammerheads, because the AP2 on Ion Hammerheads has always been, on the overcharge profile, has always been something that bothered me, and the strength 8. Going to strength 9 AP 3 damage on the D6 plus 3 shots on the Ion overcharge actually feels good now. Feels good. So it could be a case that this is just a way to make some of these units that are good in some matchups and bad in some others, like I mentioned at the start of this segment, feel better into some other things. Because I found that, like, you play Ion Cannon Hammerheads and you play into an army of 2+ saves, and you're like, well, I could have just taken freaking its pointing Crude Hounds and been happier.
Yeah, exactly. And then, with the ignore cover from your army rule through the marker-like keywords, it can really put people on no save or 6+ saves, which is really nice. I personally like it on like breaches for when the issue isn't the quantity of shots, it's how many saves that your opponent gets to make and how many they fail. So a breaches AP2 is insane. Sadly, they don't need to be strength 7, but
No, but I like that. I like that you mentioned the breaches because I mean the breaches are usually I'd say like 98% of the time on a one-way trip. Anyway, they're literally just there to kill and clear an objective, and it doesn't matter if you only got 2 guys left in that unit after all the hazardous, even though that would be a horrific roll of all time. It doesn't matter if they all kill themselves as long as they killed the unit they went in there to kill, and so I think this is perfect for them.
Yeah, and I've got one more unit which I'd mention, which is quite interesting to use this on, and that would be broadsides with missiles in particular.
Missiles.
Because going from AP1 to AP2 is great, but I think also especially because hazardous on vehicle and character models is through mortals, I believe, and broadsides have a data sheet rule that they get a 4+ feel no pain against mortal wounds, so they mitigate the drawback really well. From
there you go. You mean you wouldn't want to take it on the Storm Surge and have it deal like 9 mortal wounds to itself a turn because it's got like 12 guns?
Yeah, if I'm allowed to start playing 2,500 points, and while everyone else takes 2,000, then I'll start taking Storm Surges and doing that.
Yeah. So cluster rocket system, destroyer missiles, pulse driver cannon, 2 smart missile systems, and so 6. You got 6 things. Yeah, so you're going to do yourself like 3 mortal wounds every time you shoot the thing.
Yeah, it sounds gorgeous.
All right, next up we have Threat Assessment Analyzer for 1 CP. Your shooting phase. 1 Tower Empire unit from your army has them selected to shoot. Select the sustained or lethal hits ability until the end of the phase. Ranger equipped by model had the selected ability. You can, of course, then pick to choose to have both lethal and sustained, but you have hazardous, and this is why you can't use it with the other one, and has issues with double hazardous because +1 strength, +1 AP, lethal sustained. Yeah, that kills pretty much everything. How do you feel about this strat, brother?
It's wonderful. I absolutely love it. I think what I like about this the most is because when I think of what Tau struggles to do, bizarrely, is hit the target. So anything which increases the reliability of getting wounds through is exactly what I want. And there's some units in the book which have very good quality shots but not the volume, and you want to give them sustained or lethal. So I personally love Cowion, for example, because I mean there's something fun about rolling sustained too. And I think a lot of people feel the same towards Monkar with rolling lethal. So why not give a unit sustained and lethal and then increase the output phenomenally? So
It is a fact of the tower construction that because Cowion and Monkar judiciously give you out these abilities, they actually throttled your ability to give them at will in your books a lot of the time. Whereas so many people just get a sustained or lethal from purchasing a character and joining it to a logical unit, or sometimes both. You really have not a lot of ability to flex into these things. It's pretty much because they attach those identities to the detachment rules.
Yeah.
So I like that you guys finally have a CP to implement.
Why can't my units just take a leadership test to get lethal or sustained? Like that would be really, really nice.
Aren't you a leadership 7 army?
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, I'll take D3 mortals and still get it. Yeah.
And still get it. That's fine. Yeah. All right. Next one is the NeuroWeb System Jammer, 1 CP. Your opponent's shooting phase just after an enemy unit selected its targets. 1 Tau Empire Crisis unit from your army that was selected. Until the end of the phase, your unit can only be selected as the target of a ranged attack if the attacking model is outside 18. Now, this is kind of sexy, but does it come up? I don't know.
Yeah, this is. I feel like this is the adjacent fire and fade to the crisis unit, which you would much rather be a move after you're shooting, because you're in an ideal scenario. You're using this to protect a unit of crisis, which is in the open after they've killed something at the cusp of 18 inches, and you've pre-measured and set yourself up so that they can't hit you back. Which I guess is kind of mitigated by them deep striking 9 away from you. But not give everyone, the answer to how you're going to, let's say. But I mean, it's a nice to have strat. I just feel like your opponent can play around it, and then it doesn't do anything.
The other way would be you take just the long range suits, which in this case is almost just a missile pod. So you just take a missile pod team, and their whole job is to just kind of dance around from this corner of a ruin to the other corner of a ruin, constantly getting a little angle there. But the problem is their profile isn't great. a 7 minus 1 2 with four shots. So you have 12 shots, then plus an attached commander if you chose to do one. It's just not that threatening. Like, it's not like this unit is doing as much damage to a rhino as a single broadside, and costs. Does it cost more than a single broadside? It does cost more than a single broadside.
Yeah. But
yeah.
I guess if that unit had lethal and sustains for another stratagem, and they have reroll ones to hit and wound from stealth team, there's a possibility that that's the difference between killing a target and not. I guess. So I guess for that reason, you'll take it, but it may not be the most relevant. Stratagem.
It's not a bad home for that unit's not a bad home for the +1 strength, +1 AP. Strength 8 AP, 2 damage, 12 shots feels, pretty respectable, especially if you give a little bit of ignores cover and the real wants to hit, wants to wound.
Yeah.
All right, that brings us to the end of the stratagem suite, and there are some good ones in here. Like, we're not going to sit here and tell you these aren't some good stratagems. I question how good the enhancements are, because essentially it's just making one gun more better, and that one gun isn't going to change the fact that either usually you will kill the things that you're trying to kill with Tau. There's not that many times where you are putting significant assets in, and Tau players are very good at knowing what their units can and can't kill. So I'm questioning I'm questioning the design philosophy and the worthiness of these enhancements. You're going to take them in this detachment, but I wish they did something for their units as well. I would much rather you upgraded a unit to have +1 strength, or something like that with each of these things. Like, each one of them attaches to a crisis suit unit of a crisis commander equipped with a flamer, attached to a flamer unit. They've all got better flamers now, and of course you don't give them +2 strength AP and damage. That'd be silly, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think and from my point of view, the detachment doesn't give you much skill expression. It does exactly what it says on the face. It doesn't change how your units play per se to a dramatic effect. It's like, I'm being shot, I'm going to make myself a little tougher. I'm shooting, I'm going to shoot a little harder. I think it creates quite a challenge, but it's fun. And
so it's,
I mean, how often can people say that the little bit of lore above the rules is fun?
I would say that this detachment is crying out for a dynamic strat, and a strat to increase distance, a strat to move, shoot, move, a strat to have assault even. It's crying out for something to make it more dynamic, because you're exactly right. It has 1 CP to heal. It has 1 CP to minus to wound. It has 1 CP for loan up, and then it has 3 damage increasing strats. And that's it. It's really kind of very, very defined in what it can and can't do. You can be tougher and you can shoot harder. Not bad things to have, but I wish it had a make me actually shoot something I wasn't going to be able to shoot strat. Because essentially your arm becomes quite plottable in what can and can't do. Okay, so you can move 10 inches and then shoot. All right, sweet. I'll just not let you shoot.
And I think and it leads to just my general hesitation of saying what does it do over the other detachments, and kind of you arrive at saying, well, it doesn't do anything particularly better or worse. Your extra damage, rather than being through a detachment rule, is now a stratagem. And you're kind of just in a long-winded way having to just kind of jump through hoops in a different order to suffer from the same drawbacks, let's say. So if I were to have written this again, not that I'm a game designer, if I was told you've got to use the same stratagems and the same rules, and you don't have any design space for adding the dynamic movement one, like you said, I probably would have broadened what the stratagems can be used on, and I think that would have made it a bit more interesting. Some of them are quite restrictive, but I guess unnecessarily.
All right, time for us to rank and rate this thing. So, out of 10 as a Tau player, and speaking on behalf of all Tau players, how would you rate this detachment out of 10?
We're gonna give it a 5.
This
is bang in the middle, mid for a detachment.
This detachment doesn't give you a playstyle you didn't already have before. Red Cadre was already a very suit heavy, if not a suit only kind of archetypes. This isn't expanding the playability of different models and different rules that you already had. You already kind of had archetypes for. So for that, it loses a couple of points for me. And it doesn't great. I mean, as much as it does for crisis suits, it doesn't make them do anything they weren't already doing. Like, I didn't hear many people saying, "Oh no, my crisis suits don't do enough damage." You know, they kind of were good enough as they were. So this doesn't really change where Tau sit in the game for me in any way.
No,
This thing
I don't.
is,
I don't think so either. I don't think it. It's not gonna. It doesn't feel like I'm gonna be winning any more games or playing the game in a different way, or providing a different strategy with this detachment. I mean, I think I would be taking it for the sole reason of I want to take these 4 relics and I want to enforce a narrative to the game where I tell my opponent the name of my weapon before I shoot it and say, "Now I'm going to hit you with my fusion blades."
Yeah,
and,
hell yeah.
I mean, that is pretty fun, but I mean that's not winning tournaments. That's not unless your opponent concedes out of frustration. That's not getting you anywhere.
Yeah.
I think as well, like there's a clear set of units which benefit from some of these stratagems, and it just kind of beckons whether you would rather play them in a different detachment, which synergizes or maybe better synergizes with those units. So,
all right. So, best Tau players in the world. How far and how good do you think this detachment could be if you were to rank it on a tier list? So S tier down to D tier.
Oh God. Do you want me to rank the whole list where I put the other 5 as well?
No. Just where how good do you think Tau can do with this one?
I think honestly, I think I have to get lucky to go 3-2 with this detachment, and I think that's a really sad thing to say. But for at least for myself, that's kind of below where I want to be with an army. So I think that makes it a C tier.
I have it between
shit, but.
I have it between middle of C and middle of B, somewhere between there.
Yeah,
it's not upper B, it's not lower C, it's somewhere. But either way, this isn't pushing the needle. But anyway, that is going to wrap us up for this segment and this episode. Thank you so much, Lewis, for coming on. We're going to go over and record our part 2 and get some more goodness, because I know you've played a couple of games with this, and we're going to get insights into the list you are building, things you are brewing, and some spicy tech possibly coming out of left field. And then we'll talk about some matchups, what's good and what's bad for Tau, and I'll get your opinions on what Tau players should be looking to into the meta coming up. But my dude, thank you again for coming on. Absolute legend. Lovely to meet you as well. We met literally in the green room before we recorded this. So my great pleasure to have you on, mate. You've been a great time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Adam.
All right. Take care, everybody. Good night, and we'll see you next week.
You never know, this time is on the verge.